Now I get to do something that's pretty exciting. I get to introduce this afternoon's keynote speaker, Tom Hartman. Tom is an executive coach for Catalysis Incorporated, which is an organization that's now working largely in the healthcare industry to help move that forward. He has more than 30 years of experience in the lean journey. He teaches, mentors, coaches, healthcare leaders, healthcare executives to enable them to more radically improve what it is that's going on within their world to improve throughput, quality, and cost. Tom also spent 19 years with Autoliv. If you've had an opportunity to visit that organization, it's a former AME Excellence Award recipient and a Shingo Award recipient. He helped to create the winning culture that's there with a really great team, and of course that's based on the Toyota production system and the Toyota culture. Tom was inducted into the Shingo Academy in 2010 in the AME Hall of Fame in 2013, and I am truly honored to introduce this guy because he's been one of my teachers and personal mentors. I've been out to their organization several times. He is always gracious with his time, and I'm very much looking forward to hearing what he has to say.
Good afternoon. So, for me to get started, I need to know a little bit about you. How many of you have been on the lean journey at least 2 years? Okay. At least 5 years. At least 10 years. 15 years. 20 years. Great, we have a lot of beginners here. As am I. So, what I'm going to talk about today is rocket scientists and neurosurgeons. Lean works in both worlds. So, I'm going to reflect a little bit on my 33 years of lean experience. The first 10 years I was in the dark. And the biggest challenge, of course, is to consolidate 33 years into 50 minutes. So to a degree, you're going to be drinking from a fire hose, but maybe that's not so bad. So this is what I've discovered that really works. Now, first of all, though, I'm going to prove that it works, okay? So, now you thought I was kidding about the rocket scientist stuff. When I joined Autoliv, I was the third of 3 change agents. The first 2 were former colleagues of mine from Federal Mogul Corporation. And they were looking for someone to be vice president of design engineering, leading a bunch of, yep, you guessed it, rocket scientists, former Morton Thiokol rocket scientists. And they couldn't find what they wanted, so they chose me. I reminded them, I went to that other Indiana university, not the one that teaches engineering. I knew nothing about rockets, to which they responded, you don't know anything, you're perfect. So what I did know was process discipline. So this is Autoliv's lean journey. Beginning in 1995, I joined in 96. Interestingly enough, in 97, the other 2 guys left. We merged with Autoliv AB out of Stockholm, and somewhere afterward, there was a comment made by one of my 2 colleagues that, do you know that Sweden is smaller than New Jersey? That didn't go very well with the new CEO, so they left. But as we go into this, you can look at this, and I'm going to count on you reading a lot faster than I can talk. But as you can see, we began in operations, design, engineering, and went straight through, even including having our own lean clinics for healthcare. But the healthcare part will wait. So why did we start? Basically, we stunk at everything. We were the largest supplier of automotive safety products to Toyota globally, and Toyota knew our delivery stunk, our quality stunk, our technology was pretty good, and they knew they were either going to have to fix us or cut us loose. So, you see the issues. Basically, we had most management issues, almost all process issues, but what we did have was we had a strong belief that we needed to improve. And that's what Toyota grabbed onto as giving them an idea that maybe they could salvage us. Today, Autoliv commands at least 38% of the global market. Autoliv is more than twice as big as its next biggest competitor. Autoliv does everything from airbags, seat belts, steering wheels, automotive electronics, and there are roughly 64,000 employees operating in 27 countries worldwide with sales that exceed $8 billion. Depending on which plant you looked at, we averaged somewhere between 25 and 50 suggestions implemented per person every year, with one facility that distinguished itself by implementing 100,000 suggestions in a single year. Now, you ask yourself, how do you change that much in a business that actually has pyrotechnics and not blow something up? Well, my job at Autoliv for 8 years was I was the global president over the inflator business. We had 4 plants in Europe, 4 in the States, and a joint venture that we ultimately purchased in Japan. Our customers were everywhere, including one of our biggest competitors. Now, how many of you have heard of recalls relating to automotive airbag inflators? How many of you have a vehicle that is on recall in back order for automotive inflators? Now, if you are one of those, as soon as you can, get it fixed, because it's not very easy to deflect shrapnel, okay? I managed our business, and I know the problem Takata had. But what I'm telling you is that the Autoliv products do not fail, and we know why they don't.
I enjoy coming to work every day because I just love what I do. The changes, new improvements, ideas, going to different areas and seeing other things and taking it back to my area, and the operator's like, yeah, let's do it. And I love it. It's fun. When I present something for my people and we stop production, take care of it right then and there, you can just feel the strength. And I do my job, everybody else does their job, my management will be there for me. Kaizen comes in, we implement it, we give it a try, and we keep improving from that point on. And we never go backwards to where we started from. And it's to make their job easier and make them happier at what they do.
Isn't Tracy awesome? What you just saw is the essence of lean. It is the engaged culture of continuous improvement. Did you see the fire in her eyes? We used to say that the fire in the eyes is the window to the soul. And, you know, it's the light, the eyes are the light to the soul. And Tracy has clearly the kind of leadership that we need at the front line in everything we do. This is modules produced, airbag modules produced per head per month. I apologize for having two charts, but since I'm no longer on the inside, I had to do my best to kind of piece them together. But what you see there is Autoliv defying the law of diminishing returns. At the same time, in 1996, Autoliv began. We had 50,000 parts per million defective. No, these weren't airbags that blew up. They were scratches, they were deliveries that didn't occur on time. But Autoliv today is between 2 and 3. Not good enough, but better. And yes, we won a few prizes. Most importantly, we won the prize of having our people believe in us. That's the Holy Grail. So, now enough of Autoliv. I'm going to shift to my new job. I retired from Autoliv in August of 2015, and I remember what my 93-year-old father told me. He said, retirement is overrated. And so after a boring weekend, I went to work for Catalysis. I had met the CEO of Catalysis 8 years earlier, and John Toussaint, Dr. John Toussaint, told me, you know, things are pretty interesting over here in healthcare too. If you're ever interested in joining, let me know. So I let him know about, now it would be 6 years ago, and said, you know, when you get a chance, let me know. I'd like to get in and see what I could do to help. And, well, I got my chance. So what is Catalysis? It's a 503c. It's a business nonprofit, or 501c. It's a nonprofit educational institution founded 10 years ago by Dr. Toussaint. There are 3 elements of change. You see what they are. We don't really have an opportunity to change the payment, but we can work on transparency and care delivery. Most of what we do is on care delivery. Our work includes coaching, education, we publish books, but we link organizations, and for example, a few of these you might have heard of. Mayo Clinic, University of Michigan Healthcare, Indiana University Healthcare, Cleveland Clinic, well, you look, Seattle Children's, and some of them are in Canada. You'll hear me reflect a story out of St. Mary's out of Kitchener, Ontario. Today, many healthcare organizations are in trouble. Reimbursements are dropping annually, especially from Medicare, the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services. Costs continue to rise, including pharmaceuticals, and they're really caught in the same squeeze that we were in automotive. Some organizations are going into bankruptcy, and some of them are actually closing their doors. You can see the highlights up there. And that's only the beginning. The 3rd highest cause of death from all sources in the States is medical error. If you look at the number up there, 251,000 medical errors in a single year, and that's only part of it. The rest of it that should really make you think is that only 10% of them are reported. The very best in healthcare, the very best are where we were at Autoliv 20 years ago, 22 years ago now. They're at 50,000 parts per million. Think about that. The next time you have to go to the hospital, when they get ready to administer something, there's a word that you should probably remember: confirm. Do not assume, okay? And please don't let me disparage people in healthcare. I've never met a more passionate, more committed, more empathetic group of people who have studied longer and harder to do what they do anywhere at any time, including the rocket scientists. They go to work every day and they face tragedy. Now, it's opportunity for them. But every time they go into work, it's life and death. In airbags, our goal was to perform in the few that have to, because we said we don't get a second chance. Every day in healthcare, they are challenged to save lives. And if they don't perform, people may not leave. Not the way they intended anyway. It's very challenging. And in automotive, we prided ourselves by developing our suppliers so our raw materials were consistent. In healthcare, the raw materials are totally inconsistent. That's us. Everything they deal with is somewhat unique.
We got an issue in America. Too many good docs are getting out of business. Too many OBGYNs aren't able to practice their love with women all across this country.
What? Did he really say that? Yeah, politicians try to get in and, lend their 2 cents worth, and usually it's worth about that much. Very few healthcare institutions really know how to go about improving. They look for structural solutions, things like mergers, outsourcing, acquisitions. These structural problems don't get to the root. They don't get to the people, and they don't get to the process. All they do is kick the can down the road, push the pincers of disaster a little farther away, and then ultimately the room closes in and they're right back where they started. In 2016, I started work with St. Agnes Medical Center in Fresno, California. Wonderful people, but they really didn't know anything about lean. Typically for healthcare, incredibly well trained clinically, but when it came to management and leadership, not so much. When you look at what we did at St. Agnes, we helped them by setting clear expectations. We linked their true north. We helped them identify their true north principles, values, and metrics, and we made their performance visual. Sounds pretty straightforward, huh? Well, it is, but it took quite a while to get done because they did it. Our goal as Catalysis is to enable, to impart capability so that they can succeed. Same thing Toyota did with us at Autoliv. You can see that these results are pretty impressive. First of all, when you look at the emergency department, that's the one on the left, when we began, they had 16% of their people that came to the emergency room that never saw anyone, like a nurse, a doctor. They got tired of waiting and they left. 16%. You can see from the graph that something changed around August, July. We started in July, they implemented improvements in August, and now they're left without being seen as like 0.5%. If you look at the ED volume, during that time, because the throughput rose, their volume rose. There was pent-up demand they didn't even know existed. We go to the inpatient discharges. Basically, we did the same thing there. If you can imagine, some people would bring their grandmother, father, to the hospital and then go on vacation. That's a true story. People, you can't imagine. They become very elusive when it's time for them to come home. But we worked through that with the discharge process, and we were able to dramatically increase the number of discharges. And look what happened to the operating margin. They went from losing money to making good money in a very short period of time. Now let's go to Seattle Children's Hospital, one of the world-renowned pediatric institutions that also includes a research institute that consists of 1,200 PhDs and other researchers who work to find immunotherapies to combat cancer so that the body's natural resources fight the cancer cells. They work on other improvements to existing diseases like malaria and diseases like that. Those researchers come to visit Autoliv multiple times every year, and they vie for that opportunity by saying to Jim Hendricks, not Jimmy Hendricks, Jim Hendricks, the president of the Institute, this is why I want to come to Autoliv. And I read one of them, and it said, because I want to solve this problem faster and save more lives. That person got to go. But it's very interesting when you look at here.
Lean is a methodology. It's actually a philosophy, a way of thinking. It grew out of manufacturing principles from the Japanese. And some of the key tenets of that were essentially to increase efficiency and to empower people.
The Autoliv plant that we go to in Ogden, Utah is actually a car airbag manufacturing facility. And there are more similarities between the Research Institute and Autoliv than one might initially think.
So I think Lean has a very direct connection to one team, one mission, in that one of the key tenets of Lean methodology or Lean thinking, this Lean philosophy, is teamwork. And one of the really nice things about this trip is we've had so many different areas of the Research Institute represented, and they've all found a way to apply this to their work.
What's the common thread? Just shout out. What's the common thread between airbags and saving lives at Seattle Children's? People and process, excellent. So what Jim did at Seattle Children's was set up cross-functional teams that cut through all the silos. Sound familiar? That's in the Research Institute. They had people from the labs where they have the pets, I guess, where they have the animals that they use to test their immunotherapies. They had them in the team. They had people who were clinicians who would get more patients to enroll in their clinical trials. All of these were managed with cross-functional teams. Where did they learn about cross-functional teams? They learned about it in Ogden at Autoliv. One application they use, Lean methods, they use standard work. And what you see on the right here, and I realize it's a little bit hard to read, is one of, you see, they have 70 standard protocols that they use for treating disease. Mark Del Beccaro, who's the CMO at Seattle Children's, told me, we started 15 years ago and we have 70 of them done. And I said, Mark, what happens when a physician refuses to follow the protocol? And he said they get their privileges suspended. And I looked at him and said, when's the last time you did that? And he said, I haven't done it too often, but the last time was a couple of years ago. But the word gets around pretty quickly when you do that. And they sign up to it when they come in. So what does one of these protocols look like? That's 5 pages of the flow diagram of logic for the physicians to follow. This one happens to be approved by, there's a team of about 15 clinicians who approved this, and this one's on its 5th rev. As you would expect, they do improve over time. Another customer of ours is in St. Mary's in Kitchener, Ontario, a suburb of Toronto. If you read this, it says, St. Mary's is ranked 1st in all of Canada in patient survival rates. Don Chilton, who was just recently retired as CEO of St. Mary's, is now one of our faculty, and he's teaching others what he did at St. Mary's.
The majority of our inpatients are senior and therefore at a higher risk of falling during their stay. Lean management gave us the perfect structure to tackle this problem and involve frontline staff in finding solutions. Our data showed that falls most often occurred overnight and early in the morning as patients got up to use the washroom. We interviewed patients to identify their challenges, and we brainstormed and tried strategies to help reduce inpatient falls. We installed night lights at patient bedsides as well as motion sensor lights in the patient washrooms. We also decluttered and created checklists so that rooms are set up with a clear pathway to the washroom. We scheduled more regular nursing rounds, that way patients are seen more often. And finally, when nurses hand over their patients to the incoming shift, they now do this at the patient's bedside. Inpatient falls were reduced by 50% in the last 2 years.
Falls were reduced 50% in the last 2 years. And all they did was engage this, with all of their people getting input from the patients. They made their life, while they're in the hospital at St. Mary's, much more reliable, predictable, and repeatable. And that's our job in Lean. So let's go to a little closer to home for me, Intermountain Healthcare out of Salt Lake City. They've been on their Lean journey since 2006. Some of my former colleagues from Autoleave left and went to Intermountain Healthcare to help them. I'm going to borrow a few slides from Tim Pearson, who was, now he's the CEO at another hospital, but he was the vice president over the North region of Intermountain. And in 2006, he visited Autoleave. Said he really wasn't prepared for what he was about to see. On the surface, he saw charts and graphs in 3-part harmony. And basically, it was the visual management system. Yeah, he was, impressed, but what he didn't understand then was what was going on below the surface. Kind of like a duck, on the surface of the water, everything looks normal and very predictable, and underneath the paddling is going on very energetically. Similarly, what he saw was the culture that operated underneath that drove this engine of perpetual improvement. And in Tim's words, I was converted. You look at these figures, they're pretty darn impressive. 42% reduction in safety events, more than 3,000 huddles with a tiered escalation, more than 23,000 ideas implemented, improved access with 73% of the clinics, 90% of the quality goals met. This lean stuff really does work. And what? 1,800 ideas from the docs? Who engages physicians in lean? Well, Intermountain does. So does Kaiser. I'm working with Kaiser Permanente now. And to a great degree, they're physician-led. So, at the basis of all of this is the Shingo model, the Shingo principles. And the idea that guiding principles form the foundation for the behaviors that enable us to align the systems and drive the results. It seems pretty simple, but it really isn't, and you know that. So now that we all agree it works, let's get to the good stuff. What did I actually learn over 33 years? So if we look, it's align, enable, and improve, and we'll start with align. Now, there are many ways to align an organization, and coaching I've seen in many forms. You know, I came from the automotive industry. I refer to myself as a recovering automotive executive. Healthcare people understand that. And they say, well, you know, there is hope. So I want to share with you the coaching style of, I have 13 grandchildren. 11 of them are boys. At this time, 3 of them were 4. So what I'm going to share with you is my grandson Ryan's coaching style, which is pretty typical of what I grew up with in Detroit.
Ryan, you need to cheer for both.
What's happening? I don't know what he said. Troy, you won.
I can't even hold it. I can't hold it.
Ryan, come here, honey. Come see your nanas.
His cousin Jonah said, Ryan, it's only a game. Maybe faster isn't the kind of coaching we need. So, when we look at it, the principles of the bedrock of lean transformation. Leader behavior either reinforces or undermines the culture we strive to create. Only courageous leaders can achieve this success. When we began our lean journey, we were a year into it before any of the 3 presidents bothered to tell our CEO. When Harada-san came to teach us, that's when I described that our lean journey really began. But none of us told Gunnar Bark, the CEO, that we had agreed to have Harada-san with us for 3 years. So one day, Gunnar was with me at the Brigham City inflator plant, largest inflator plant in the world, and he said, who's this Japanese guy over here? And I said, well, that's Mr. Harada. He's from Toyota. He's here to teach us. Whoa, wait a minute. Is he stealing our technology? I said, no. He's teaching us. He's helping us to understand how to manage the operations and drive out waste. He said, well, does he have something to do with these improvements we've seen? I said, yes, he does. Well, that's good. But don't let him steal our technology. So that was one of them. Nancy Hollingsworth, CEO at St. Agnes. About 8 months into the lean journey, we had a visit from the CEO of Trinity. If any of you are familiar with Trinity Healthcare, $15 billion, 90 hospitals, they're mammoth. Well, St. Agnes was one of their hospitals, and they were struggling. And Nancy said, I don't know what's going to happen when Rick comes out, but whatever he says, I'm not abandoning this journey. If I go down, I go down, but we're going forward. That is exactly what it takes from leadership. If your leaders are not willing to change their own behavior, you really need to reconsider whether you want to go down this road. Because if the leadership is undermining what you're trying to create, you're just going to get headaches and ulcers. The Catalysis house that you see, everybody's got a house in Lean. Some of them are more like outhouses, but they're houses. But we have the management system and the leadership behaviors up where the ceiling joists would be. And when you look at the leadership behaviors we're trying to create, this document does a very good job of describing it. And I actually borrowed this document from the Lean Enterprise Institute, but it's based on the Shingo principles. So only when leader behaviors link with management behaviors, which link to frontline behaviors, does the actual process of transforming your culture begin. Only when you've linked all the way does it begin. And you notice I'm linking behaviors. There's this binocular vision of process, and I'm going to go into that in just a minute. This is our roadmap for transforming an organization. We begin with the executives, we go to the central improvement team. Sometimes we have to engage the board of directors. Ultimately, we get to the value streams, the front line, and we implement management systems. The modules we teach look like this. They look very familiar. Half of them are oriented toward results. On the left side, left brain, half of them are oriented toward behavior, which is the right brain. At St. Mary's, their True North pyramid looks like this. All you really need to know is that it's aligned. The strategies are connected all the way from the boardroom to the front line. On one side, it's strategy deployment. On the other side, it's linked behaviors. Together, it's magic. So when we look at part 2, it's enable. The enable part of this is creating the environment in which the culture of continuous improvement that I referenced Harada-san trying to teach us can thrive. Ultimately, our goal is this: more people, more capable of adding value more frequently. That's how the improvement curve goes from y equals mx plus b to y equals more m plus mx plus b. That's not the goal. The goal is this. It's bending that curve vertically. And the only way you do that is more people times more capability times more frequently. When you do that, you get what you're looking for. So, lean management systems enable the successful delegation and systemic development of team members. If you don't have lean management systems, you don't have a sustainable system. If you look at this document, at Autoleave, when Harada-san taught us, he had 33 pages he used. You will see 2 of these. I've never shared these. Well, I've given 2 copies with solemn oaths that they wouldn't be shared, and they've both been honored. This page shows you the process of improving. What you see is the goal of leaders, of managers, is to do management, AKA get results. You get results through the help of team members. You pull the ability out of the person. When we meet people, they're two-dimensional. They look like a resume. Our job is to create the environment where the whole person can emerge, and the creativity that that person is capable of is released because you have created the environment where all of the capabilities of that person are not only welcome, but they're fostered and they're implemented. We create a good working environment that visualizes the results, in other words, create the visual management system. Look at the flow diagram. We set a target, we reach the target. Reaching targets is not optional. This isn't the Cub Scouts or the Girl Scouts. We do reach the target. But in the muddy middle, there's change that has to occur. The leader stands off to the side, waiting until the team gets bogged down. We used to say we give them enough rope to pull the wagon, but when it's wrapped around the neck 3 times, we step in and say, "Ooh, let's wait a minute, let's talk about this." And then we back out again. And the reason we do that is so they can go through the blood, sweat, and tears and experience the growing, the learning process. Because that's on the left side, you have the binocular vision. The left side is getting results. The right side is developing the people, showing them how to improve. If you don't do both, you failed as a leader. If all you get is results, as soon as you're gone, that process just died because you were the constraint. If we look at the next one, all of these this is the Harada-san summary of TPS. Every one of those highlighted areas that's in yellow is people related. Work worthwhile, get results through the efforts of the team members. All of this is engaging your team. If you don't get the personal, the human side of this, you're absolutely failing. If all you get is results and you don't raise the skill and the ability of your people, you really need to go find another job, because Harada would say half your job is developing your people. No, results aren't optional, but neither is developing your people. As part of the environment, executive leadership periodically has to burn the ships. You all recall the scene in Hunt for Red October, where Captain Ramius has all of the people that were in the plot to take the Red October, a nuclear submarine, and defect to the United States. Well, they get cold feet, and they're saying, no, it's not too late, we can go back. And then in his Irish brogue, Sean Connery says, "There'll be no going back." That's our role. We don't plan retreats. To quote another American general, we are advancing constantly. Anybody remember that quote? Patton. So the point is, we go forward fearlessly or we fail. And that's the leadership it requires. On this sheet, you can see the reason why more than 90% of lean transformations fail. Holding the team accountable in a respectful way is absolutely critical. Holding the team accountable in a respectful way. How do you do that? How many of you think holding someone accountable is a comfortable situation? I didn't. Early in my career, when I had to take someone to task, I stayed up almost all night, so I was cranky because it wasn't natural. And I thought you had to be nasty to do it. I still wasn't very good at it. But when you give people clear expectations, you owe them the respect to tell them when they're not performing. So we make accountability easier to see and easier to execute. Defining expectations and holding people accountable is the key to a successful lean implementation. It's not the only one, but without this, you will fail. Arata-san taught us good leaders don't create followers, they create more good leaders. You can always tell weak leaders because they're surrounded by weak followers. People that do this regularly. Oh yeah, you're right, boss. You got it. You know, you ought to just get a bunch of bobbleheads and put them around the table. What you need are rogues. You need people that are willing to sign up, to buckle up when things are tough and stand there shoulder to shoulder with you. If you don't have those kind of people around you, you need to question why. You need people to challenge you and to challenge the envelope. Finally, the third foundational element is improvement. Input plus method equals output. Many times we forget about the M, the one in between. We like to go, we need more investment, more people, more pressure, more stress, more hours. But we never think about changing the process. Process that in the absence of changing the process, you really are only stretching. You're not changing anything that means anything sustainable in the long term. And when the expert-driven process, not based on the people, when the expert leaves, you're done. This is St. Mary's view of this, a little hard to read. What it says is process plus people equals purpose. It's exactly what whoever it was over here said a few minutes ago. We go from, with systemic waste elimination, we adopt things like confirming rather than assuming. We do process audits, or observations as they're known in healthcare. Auditing is not a good word in healthcare for whatever reason. We create standard work for flawlessly managing change. Every time we change, it's like a baton pass in a track meet where you have a relay race. There are many things that can occur, and only one of them's good. And then we go through the more, creating the perpetual improvement machine. You see that? Promote from within whenever possible. This isn't a Halloween flavor here, but if you hire from outside rather than promoting from within, you're literally grafting someone else's culture into yours. Now, on occasion, that's fine. You may need a specialist. But if you do that on a regular basis, your culture is more like Frankenstein than it is homogeneous. Okay? Think about that. This is Intermountain Healthcare, their daily escalation process where they go through 6 levels of leadership in 75 minutes. And this process engages and supports all 38,000 of their team members in 27 sites. I know where they got this. Scott Saxton brought it from Autoleave. This is the Autoleave AMO structure, which is just a structure of organization that implements cross-functional teams. Cross-functional teams that can lend all of their specialized capability where it combines together for the good of the whole. And it's magic for value streams. If you don't have cross-functional teams leading your value streams, you need to go back, drop back 10 and punt, start over. You need those. If you don't have cross-functional teams, you've got silos. This is a good example of what happens over time if you don't honor standards. Lack of standards and respect for those standards ends up causing a gap a negative gap. Weak belief is usually the cause of this. In contrast, when you teach the standard, audit the standard, reinforce the standard, live the standard, continuous improvement happens every day, like waves of excellence. How's that, Ellen? Every day, all you'll hear is all these waves of improvement, and your biggest challenge as leader will be keeping up. Trust me, that's a good problem to have. And the other thing you need to remember is the reason that we do this. In both worlds I've lived in, we worked at saving lives. Ultimately, if you're saving jobs, you're saving lives. You're saving security for the lives that you serve. As servant leaders, our job is to be able to provide job security, a safe workplace, and fulfillment for our people, so that when they come to work to make a difference. When they come to work, they engage. When the kids come to the open house at your facility and the parents are just going on and on about, we made this improvement and we did that and it was awesome. And the kids still say, Dad, when do we get the ice cream? But you'll know you've arrived when you see people with the fire in the eyes that you saw from Tracy. Remember that look. That look is the Holy Grail. When people come to AutoLeave, what do they come to see? It's that look. It's that engagement, it's that understanding, the light that goes straight to the soul. If you need to get in touch with me, that's where you reach me. Thanks for your patience.